The Temple Studio is available for all of your recording, mixing, and mastering needs, whether it's on location or via internet file exchange. Located in the San Fernando Valley, the Temple has 40 physical inputs for live ensemble tracking and a production team with over 30 years of experience. To book time, call 213-840-1770 or email tchadt@me.com. Welcome to the Dive Bar Rockstar Podcast, a show exploring the lives of professional musicians of all types, touring musicians, recording artists, songwriters, engineers, bar bands, wedding bands, and anyone making their living in the music industry. Whether you've dreamed of being a professional or you already are one, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Eric Baines, and I hope that you not only find some entertainment here, but also some helpful tips, trade secrets, and ideas that will help you achieve your dreams. Well, it's all over. There's no music business anymore. All your dreams of being a musician are null and void at this point. We can't work. It's kind of unbelievable. I never thought that I would see this in my lifetime, but I think that we're going to get through this. I don't think it's all negative. I'm kind of half joking. It's weird. It doesn't seem real, but I think we're going to get through this. I think that human beings need music, and it's part of human nature. So once everything calms down and this virus gets under control, we're going to go right back, and maybe it'll even be better because people are going to have this time off from live music. They've all missed their favorite bands or favorite musicians. So I think, and ironically, it's given me the time. Is it ironic? I don't know. I'll do the math on the irony. I think people get that wrong. But it's interesting that it's given me the time to start a podcast, something I've always wanted to do, and have some of my great friends and great musicians on here to talk about what they do for a living. And hopefully you guys can get something out of our conversations and our discussions. Which brings me to today, one of my best friends of all time, Mr. Chad Wright. He's an awesome drummer. He's going to be our guest. He's currently a member of Bruce Hornsby's band, the Noisemakers, as well as the drummer for the Jacksons. He's also played with Michael Bolton, Shaka Khan, Lee Rittenauer, Keiko Matsui, Tina Marie, Rick James, Gladys Knight, Corbin Bleu, Lucas Graybill, The Temptations, Eric Benet. The list goes on and on and on. He's also played on almost every one of my records. He's an amazing drummer and an awesome guy. So without further ado, please welcome Chad Wright. Star. We've known each other for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
Hundreds of gigs.
Yeah.
All over hundreds of countries. Probably not, but
yeah, well,
but maybe, I don't know. A lot of them.
Probably 30 to 50, somewhere in that range.
Exactly. So I wanted to talk about your story kind of from the beginning, and I know quite a bit about it because we're such good friends, but you started in Atlanta.
I did. Born and raised for the most part. Yeah, man, and Atlanta's funny, exciting time to have grown up there because obviously a lot of great musicians came out of Atlanta, and a few good bands, man. SOS Band, Atlanta Rhythm Section,
right.
38 Special.
That's cool.
And Cameo wound up being based there. Cameo's actually out of New York. That's where they started. But they moved to Atlanta for I guess, I'm paraphrasing from an interview from Larry Blackman, but the possibilities of what Atlanta was going to become. And they actually had a great hand in that. I don't know if they realized that or not, but they did have a great hand in it.
And at the time, New York was not in good shape.
No one.
Atlanta probably looked really good. And so did you play music in high school?
Yeah, man. I mean, I
when
played
did you start
music as long as I can remember. So it started probably like you or anybody else, banging on pots and pans, probably.
Right.
I mean, it's true. But at like 4, I got my first toy drum set. And
so it was always drums?
For the most part. I mean, the first instrument I ever took lessons on, not by choice, was piano. I remember my grandmother moving their old antique piano into our house and telling my mom and dad they will play piano.
I think that's good. I think that's a good thing for kids.
Yeah.
You know, everyone should at least know something about music.
Exactly.
Even if you're going to be an accountant eventually.
Well, you know what? It's math. It's
exactly.
all math.
Well, that's very true.
So,
yeah. And piano also percussive.
So there was definitely a lot of banging, as my grandmother would call it, banging.
But she had no idea what was to come. You want just wait. There'll be more banging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait till you see my next instrument.
Exactly.
And now for my next trick. And you were also in marching band, no?
It's a marching band, yeah.
We have that in common
We have that in common.
And I actually taught drumline at my high school for another 9 years after I graduated. I was the drum instructor.
But you know, coincidentally, the first instrument I ever played in marching band was not drums, it was trumpet.
Me too.
Wow, see,
strange.
That's why it's there's three of us in this relationship.
Exactly.
That'll be explained later.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get to that.
Yeah, and actually in middle school, in elementary school, I started playing trumpet, and then my 6th grade year, my aunt, my mom's youngest sister, was in high school, and she talked their band director into letting my brother and I be in their marching band. It's like little mascot, and so we played.
Oh, funny.
So here I was. It was great exercise because there wasn't too much reading involved. There was reading involved, but for the most part, this band did their arrangements from ear. So, man, I trained my ear really well playing in that marching band.
Yeah.
And my dad made a deal with me. He's like, I'll let you play in drumline, but you got to play trumpet.
Oh, and like concert band.
And concert band and symphonic.
Right.
So I could play drums in jazz band. I could play drums in marching band, but I had to keep up the trumpet and the other. Yeah,
I actually played... I switched to bass eventually, but I did drumline in the marching band, and I played trumpet through sophomore year in the orchestra. So, and it wouldn't be like every day, but whenever they needed horns and turned into a symphony, then I'd be one of the guys.
Did you ever switch to any other brass while you were in there?
Well, no. My brother played saxophone for about 8 seconds. And so when he got it, though, I was like, oh, that's cool. So I grabbed it immediately and just flew through his book, and I wasn't ever any good at it, but for a second, it was around. I remember we had a talent show at school called Pops Festival at high school, and somebody was doing Kokomo by the Beach Boys. And so I was like, oh, I'll play the sax solo. And I played it for the audition, and they're like, we love the act, maybe not so much the sax. So I'm like, all right, I'll go back to bass. So I didn't really pursue it. And you mentioned that you have a brother.
I do.
He looks just like me. Because we're twins.
Looks exactly like
me. I'm an honorary triplet.
Sax too.
Yeah, see? And now he's a guitar player. So his sax playing went as well as mine did. It sounds like, I don't know. But you have a brother, Chay. He's a guitar player. And the three of us have done tons of gigs together as well.
No kidding.
And so that's cool that you've had. The whole journey has kind of been with him, with the exception of you moving to LA and him staying in Boston. But you've not done this alone. It's kind of, right? Were you always playing together? Or?
I think playing together was haphazard. In other words, like in obviously in middle school and high school, we had a band together.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bands and whatever in high school. And when we went to our first college, we played in all the ensembles together. Mm-hmm. When we got to Berklee, you could see us split because he was film scoring major. Wrong. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. He was business management major. He wanted to go into film scoring, and then he decided he wanted to go into the business side. That being said, he was always producer engineer. And so his focus was always in production engineering of some sort, and writing. And mine at Berklee, even though I started out as an MP&E major, I switched to professional music. So at Berklee, we didn't really play a lot together.
Which is funny, actually, because that's the first time I saw both of you guys, and it just seemed like every recital I went was both of you in the band.
Wow.
So from my perspective, I was like, oh, those are the twins again.
That was probably 1 year. 1 year, like 1990.
Well, I was only there for a year.
Okay, so then that would be it.
That would be the year. Yeah. And so did you always have your sights on Berklee, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The conversation my senior year in high school was, I'm going to go to Berklee. And my mom and dad were there, and they had there was a financial guy that came to the house and with the book of all the colleges, and this is tuition for this college, this is tuition for that college. And I specifically, he'll deny it, but I specifically remember my dad saying, "No fucking way. I'm paying that much money for college."
Yeah.
Because we were all kind of blown away, like, this is Ivy League. This is Harvard level.
Right.
We didn't even think about it until that moment.
Mm-hmm. Did you get scholarships and stuff? Or?
Yeah, I got a partial scholarship.
Yeah.
Which helped.
So do you think it was worth it, the money?
Oh, yeah.
Because I get into conversations a lot with the drummer that I play with currently, and it's just about, because he's kind of a finance guy on the side too. And nowadays, you're going to come out of Berklee with 120 grand's worth of debt.
I'm still paying my scholarship, my student loans off.
Wow, yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
Pretty sad.
So he's always like, don't do it. But I'm always like, I get where you're coming from, but for one, education's important. And this is a business where you can easily just be like, oh, I play pretty good guitar, and then you can make a living and you can do it. But the guys that are at the top, most of them are educated.
At this point, yes. And I look at it like this too, as I tell young people, even when Berklee calls me to get to donate money every year, as they, I'm sure, call you.
Right.
And that kid on the other line is going, hey man, am I going to be able to live?
Right.
Can I make a living doing this? Mm-hmm. It's cool for me to assure them, yes. I mean, obviously, you do what we did, and anybody else out here who's had any sort of success. You work hard. But to me, the networking at Berklee, as in any college, is what it's all about. At the end of the day, that's what, to me, college is all about. The degree is there, which I did not get.
Right. And it's not like you're not going to get great musical experiences there, too. I mean,
exactly.
It's an intense
and because that's just it. Exactly.
Yeah.
With those experiences come networking. If you make if you make an impact somewhere in a zone there, that network will take you through the rest of your career. And so many guys, obviously, I'm jumping ahead, but the High School Musical band. I mean, that was 5 out of 6 guys who all went to Berklee at the exact same time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what I say too.
It was a networking thing. Or if you look at the guys on The Voice, that band, most of those guys went to school. We were all there together.
Right.
And those friendships and those connections and stuff, they last a lifetime if you let them.
Yeah, and you come to town with already a network of people that you can kind of plug into. Like I can't remember the guy's name that was the head of the Berklee LA when I got here, but I went right to him.
Peter Gordon.
Yeah, Peter Gordon, exactly. I knew it was like a famous guy's name, but not that Peter Gordon. Anyway, so Peter and Gordon is the name of a band from the 60s. And I was like, anyway. So anyways, it's cool to be able to come here and plug into those people. And when you get here too, there's the Miami University guys, there's the Berklee guys, there's the North Texas guys, and there's the little pockets of people that you can kind of plug right into. So, and in the end of the day, I only went there for 3 semesters. So my debt was paid off a long time ago.
Yeah, I was there for 4 years.
But a lot of people don't graduate.
No.
But even just being there and being able to network and being able to have a number by your name, 93, is when I got out of there. It matters, and it's probably worth some of the money. And work hard, get scholarships. I don't know, get
Yeah.
good grades. I don't know.
And that's the whole deal.
But I'm
Yeah.
always this like education, knowledge is power. You know what I mean? Like I'm such an old school guy about that. And I also always say like the better you are, the more gigs you can have. The more skills you have, the more gigs you can take.
Exactly.
And knowing how to read and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And,
Don't underestimate the reading, as I tell the young folk.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. So after that, you stayed in Boston for a while.
I stayed in Boston for a while. I got my last semester there. No, second to last semester. Another great bass player, Damon Ebner, who he and I friended each other throughout school. He came to me one day and he says, "Hey, there's this band in Boston, this cover band, and they're looking for bass and drum replacement. The old guys are leaving, and do you want to audition with me?" And it was funny because, and we can get into this later about metaphysics. At the time, I didn't know anything about metaphysics. I just remember like maybe a day or so before seeing him, I said to myself, I need a rock gig, because my playing, it was really good, really solid. And I was listening to a lot of, pop, R&B, and kind of contemporary jazz. But I realized that I needed an edge. And I wasn't going to get it. And I needed to get the edge on the spot, like, on the job training, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I knew it would come from rock. And so I just went, this is a perfect opportunity. Whether I get the gig or not, the least I can do is learn the music, try and learn it exactly the way the guy played it on the record, and go from there.
Right.
So we go in and we audition in one of the tea rooms. Those of you who are familiar with 150 Mass,
yeah.
will know the tea room.
Lots of hours in there.
Yes. And so we started playing the stuff, and it felt good. The first thing the producer said after we played was, "Yeah, okay, that sounds good and solid." And then he's like, "Man, I noticed you got this thing." He's like, "Your snare is just back behind." And it was funny because it was something I was working on. It was something that I picked up from John Bonham, the English beat, as it's known.
Right,
the snare is just behind. I'm not doing that now, although I've been working on getting that back. But so he picked up on that, and then we played another song. And as we're playing, I dropped the stick in my right hand. So I just started playing the pattern with kick and snare, and I was playing quarters with my hi-hat foot. And he stopped. He says, "Yeah, that's it right there." I went, "Okay, cool."
Wow.
So we got the gig, and then I stayed with Mark for till that was 94.
Wow.
So it was fall of 94, and
that was Cat Tunes.
Cat Tunes. Mark Morrison Cat Tunes.
Right.
Which would morph into, I mean, we had a dual personality, the band Morris. So Cat Tunes was the cover band, and Morris was the original band.
Oh, cool.
So it was our alter ego.
Alter ego, yeah. Nice.
And obviously, if you came to, we would do just Morris shows where we would just play the original stuff. And then, obviously the originals would get morphed into a Cat Tunes set.
Right.
And the band, what's interesting about this band was one of the most popular cover bands in New England.
Right.
So, and people still tell you this, lines were wrapped around whatever building we were playing.
Wow.
For people trying to get in to see the band.
Right.
It was a fun and exciting band. I can't say that I contributed to that because that started, I think, 15 years before Damon and I ever got in the band.
So it was kind of a big deal to get the gig then.
Oh, it was
because you knew about them then.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what the fuck a Cat Tunes was. The way Damon,
you weren't standing in those lines.
No, man. The way Damon presented it was, "Hey, man, how would you like to make? This is no lie. How would you like to make $75 a gig? 4 or 5 nights a week."
Wow.
in a cover band.
Hmm.
And I went, yeah, I'm in,
at the
right?
time, we're like $75.
And so once we got the gig, Mark is talking to us about money, and all I zoned in on was $75 a gig. That's pretty good.
Right.
I didn't zone on the part where he said, and then after 2 weeks, I give you a raise. I double it.
Oh, wow.
And after that 2 weeks, I double that.
Whoa.
So
you're making bank.
So by the time the winter of 95 comes around, I'm bringing in maybe 150, 200 a gig.
Wow.
By the time that I left the gig in 2000, I mean, I know I was easily, I know for a fact I was making $375.
Jeez.
Maybe $400 a gig.
That's pretty good for a cover band.
It's pretty
I mean, that's
good
crazy.
And we had crew.
Right, exactly. You had a tech and stuff. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. So did you enjoy Boston? I mean, you moved, obviously. So
I enjoyed the experiences of Boston. I didn't too much care for the city. It's funny because I still don't care much for the city in terms of terrain, in terms of weather.
Right.
But the thing that I will always carry with me are the experiences, the people that were there in my life, from the school to my first wife, to Mark and the guys in the band, to friends that I met along the way.
There's a lot of great music there.
And the great music.
Yeah, and it felt like compared to if you were in New York or something, for one, it's going to cost way more. At the time, city's still not the safest place in the world. No. Boston was like the safer, nicer, a little more laid back place. It's a college town. People are there to learn. It's a totally different vibe. The pressure is a little less, than a town like LA or New York where it's like, no, now you're competing with Dave Weckl. In Boston, you're like, everyone's there sort of to figure it out and help each other. And there's like a community there that feels like that. That's cool. So, but eventually you decided you had to go.
Yeah, man.
I mean, the weather is a thing, man.
The weather was a very big factor. So Morris, the band, was picking up momentum. We put out a CD and it got some attention from some record labels.
Nice.
And I thought, okay, this is cool. This is like my Kenny Aronoff effect, where part of a band, and then this gets me to the next level, and then I can go off and I can do my thing from there. Right. And we never really pursued the next level for whatever reason. I don't know. I've never really asked Mark. We were big fish in a little pond, and sometimes we're all comfortable with that. But I gotten to a point where we were playing the same places every night, and I'm seeing the same faces, which is cool. And don't get me wrong, I was very appreciative of the situation that I was in.
Yeah. And you're in a pretty big pond. Like you're a big fish in a pretty good sized pond where you can make a living still. And, plus you're on the East Coast. You can go anywhere.
Exactly. And so with that, the band, we were exploring musically a little bit more. We were kind of broadening things out a little bit. But I had realized one night, I gotta go to the next thing. And it could have been, seeing my friends on TV, playing with whoever, or, talking to them, and they got this great tour, or blah, blah, blah. And so I knew and I had gotten to the point I was satisfied with where my playing was, because at that point, because I always do a 3-month mark. And I'm always trying to get better. There's been some times where I haven't. And I've addressed that, but this was one where I knew I got the edge.
Right.
Now I'm ready to go.
Gotcha.
And that was the thing about LA too. Like, I didn't want to come out here without having the edge. So.
And why LA and not New York?
Another concrete jungle. I'm just, and the weather. I'm not a fan of snow.
All right.
I've lived in snow long enough. Even before Boston, as a kid, we lived in Chicago for like 3 years. I'd seen enough.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, forget it. Yeah, I know. I'm originally from Denver.
Yeah.
I was on my friend's podcast from Denver last week as interviewing or whatever as a guest, and I said the same thing. I'm like, I just had to get out. I was tired of the weather sort of dictating your life. Like when it's a blizzard and the clubs don't open, then you can't work.
Right.
That never happens here.
No.
So, if I never see snow again, I'm totally fine. But I never even thought about it until I got to Berklee and met people that their big dream was going to LA. And I was like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Because I was originally from New York. I was born in Poughkeepsie and my whole family's there. So growing up as a kid in Denver, my whole goal was just get back to New York. Gotta go where the people are and whatever. But yeah, then I actually just took it. Well, then I went back to Denver after Berklee and worked there for almost 10 years. And LA's not that big of a difference, sort of. Some of the towns in Denver are the pieces of town in Denver are named the same stuff, and like the streets. And so coming out here, and then just the weather was like, oh man, I got to be here.
Yeah,
this is instantly. I was like, this is
weather,
it, man.
Yeah, my first 9 months, here, it never rained once. It was always a gorgeous day. I remember just thinking like, yeah.
I know. I remember going to the beach on like December 2nd. Being like, man, everyone at home is freezing right now and I'm looking at dolphins. This is what I want.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I also remember like going through the hills, because I'm from Colorado, so mountains. So I look at some of these driveways that are steep and so on. I'm like, man, how do they do that in the winter? Oh, wait a second. There is no winter.
That's right.
Like, this is amazing. But not only that, though, it's like, it's the same type of thing as Boston or New York. You go out any night of the week and just get your ass kicked. Yeah. There's just so many great players, and they were playing the music I liked. And this place is kind of I always wanted to be a road guy. I liked studio stuff, but I just wasn't. I'm more about travel and hotels and live audiences, and LA is more of like the players are out all the time. When they're home, they're playing, so you can go right up to them and get gigs. You know what I mean, or like offer your services. Whereas other towns like Nashville, you go out and it's more like songwriters everywhere and stuff. So you have to sort of, and they tour a lot. So the touring guys aren't necessarily playing out at home all the time. They're not always home, Not impossible, obviously, but in LA, it was just more like, this is where you go to get a road gig.
Yeah, right. That's exactly it. I was at Berklee, I was torn between studio and live because, and particularly, well, Steve Gadd is the reason why I play drums anyway. Like at 5 or 6 years old is when I discovered Steve Gadd, and hadn't processed yet what he did as far as, was it a road thing or was it a studio thing? I just heard him and went, I got to get that. Right. But when I got into middle school and started getting modern drummer and started, really listening intently to records, I was always had in my mind that I would be in like a pop band, like Duran Duran, but then I would be the studio guy. So I would be like basically a Jeff Porcaro, but those were my heroes in middle school and high school, like Jeff Porcaro, J.R. Robinson, Larry London, guys. And the reason why they were my heroes at that point was I started to realize they were playing on so many records, and the records would be vastly different. So it could be an R&B record, it could be a country record, it could be a rock record, it could be whatever. Right. And these cats were just chameleons. Mike Baird, all those. And that's when I went, okay, maybe I want to be the studio guy. And that's when I started playing everything. Right. But then when I got to Berklee and I realized how much I enjoyed playing out. Yeah. Then I went, you know what? Maybe this touring thing is a thing. And then the drum machine was so prevalent when we were coming up. Right. That I did see a decline in
session stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, without even being a part of it, just as a young person going, yeah. The world's changing. Yeah. So that's where.
But luckily, most bands at the time, even though you have the drum machine on the record, you've still got a
Still
band.
got to get.
You know, Madonna had.
That's right.
Madonna had the best, players in the world. Even though it's half the music at the time she was putting out is all sequenced.
Yeah.
But like Omar Hakim is playing it.
Omar or Jonathan Moffat or Tony Thompson.
Yeah.
So and those were like three of my favorite guys. Here again, these were guys that were heroes of mine with JR and Porcaro and Larry London and Mike Baird, because I knew of them playing one style of music, and then I find out Omar Hakim is playing on Let's Dance, or he's playing on Money for Nothing.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Or, that is Moffat playing on Open Your Heart. So
yeah. Well, I think that's why we hit it off, because that's the other thing too. Like bass and drums, to me in my head, as a producer, as a player, it's like if I don't got a drummer,
there's nothing to hold on to.
There's nothing I can do.
And I'm a frustrated bass player.
And I'm a frustrated drummer. So it's like, but it's also that diversity, because it's funny that you said a big pop band like Duran Duran. Of all the pop bands you could have picked, I'm a huge Duran Duran fan, and like not everybody is, and you can nitpick it and be like, oh, these guys are sort of hacks and this is goofy music. But if you really dig in, like they're playing their asses off. And it's pretty incredible. And John Taylor, one of the most underrated bass players of all time, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think Roger Taylor is one of the most underrated drummers of all time. And what was appealing was those guys had so many different influences, and they figured out a way to fuse them together in a great formula. Yeah. And a lot of bands came from where they're from. That whole Sheffield scene in the UK produced so many great things. But man, what other entity could fuse a Bowie and a Chic and a Velvet Underground, like all these different things into one.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is, I think that's sort of a lost, like when I was coming up and you were coming up, like the whole point was to be as diverse a musician as you could. But now it's like, I don't see that happening as much in kids. Like, oh, this is what I do. I'm part of this scene. Or
it's not impressed upon. And the way I say to young people, if I'm giving a lesson or if I'm talking to them, is the one thing that I emphasize when I was at Valdosta State and decided to really go to Berklee was, okay, I don't want to starve. Right. As a musician.
Exactly.
I don't want to be the starving musician that everyone talks about. So now that I've decided drums will be my bread and butter, what style of music will be my bread and butter with drums? And that's when I went, okay, well, I'll definitely do the pop rock thing for sure. And I loved playing jazz, but at that point in 1989, 1990, it was pretty apparent that jazz musicians weren't making what the Return to Forever guys were. I mean, it was different then because Chick Corea had Electric Band, or Herbie Hancock had come out with Rocket, so he crossed over. Yeah. But they were only doing them, which was, they weren't getting stuck in, like Miles Davis. They weren't, because they came from Miles School. Right. They weren't staying in one bag. They were just going to explore and basically, like, if you want to come for the ride, come for the ride. Right. But for me, it was, I've got to make money at this. Yeah. I'm as a musician, I'm probably not going to get super rich, but I'm definitely not going to be starving. Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing I realized when I got to LA too. I was looking around, I'm like, man, these musicians that do what I do in Denver have houses and cars and, nice gear, and like they have lives, they have families they're actually supporting. Like, it's a living out here. Yeah. Whereas Denver, I mean, if I made $20,000 a year, I was comfortable as I could be. Obviously the cost of living's less, but when I moved out here, it wasn't as bad as it is now. I mean, I moved out 2000, so 20 years ago, and it wasn't as bad. I had an apartment in Denver for like $975 a month, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I found a place in Pasadena for $925, like 2-bedroom, 1-bath. But it wasn't as bad. It was totally doable, and guys had houses, and
And so I was like, yeah, I gotta get here. And it doesn't snow. Oh man, forget it. And there's beaches and mountains.
It's a bonus.
I know, crazy. And then what was your first gig?
When I came out here?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. The first gig was I subbed for Ron Minogue my second or third week in LA at the Baked Potato on Sunset.
Uh-huh.
Doing the house band jam session for Jay Gore. Jay Gore was running it.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
And and that was the thing was
Jay Gore's an awesome guitar player in town.
Yeah, man.
He does a lot of smooth jazz now.
He does a lot of smooth jazz now.
He was with Mindy Abar for a long time.
Mindy Abar for a long time. Now he's with Warren Hill.
Warren Hill, yeah.
He did Hillary Duff.
Right. Yeah, Hillary Duff.
I recommended him for Lauryn Hill, the Miss Lauryn Hill.
Which you have to address her as, or
yeah,
if you're allowed to address her.
If you're allowed to address it. That's a whole nother story. Anyway. So that was my first gig, man.
Wow.
And then my second gig was I answered an ad in the paper. No, Musicians Contact.
Right. Yes.
I signed up for that.
Yeah. Which by the time we got here was an online thing.
That's right.
And then you.
That's right.
I did the same thing.
Yep.
In fact, that's how I met Bobby Williams, who's someone we'll get to in a minute, is through Musicians Contact.
Wow.
And Bobby was he played at this bar in Monrovia called the Brass Elephant, and we eventually ended up playing there tons. And
that's right.
He's passed away now, which is a drag.
Yeah.
But that was quite a fun gig.
That was another eye-opening thing for me in terms of play, man.
Oh wow, interesting.
That gig and being introduced to Bobby and the three of us, and then that world that opened up. That was another pivotal moment.
Wow,
for me in my playing, because I played music that I'd known about but never played, never had the opportunity to play.
Yeah, and Bobby was like so loose about anything. Like if you kind of knew it, he's gonna play it.
Yeah, and
he didn't care. Just be musical.
Yeah,
so that made it pretty fun because there was no pressure, no consequences. And if it was a mess, then we'll do it tomorrow and it'll be better. Right. Go home and listen to it if you want to, or don't, because he's not gonna.
Right.
He's gonna play it just as wrong as he did the night before. Right. But it was a lot of fun. In fact, it's called the Dive Bar Rockstar Podcast, which is a song and record that I put out that you played most of, except for that song, which is a drag.
But that's my favorite song on the record.
Oh man, well, it's because you're humble. Yeah.
No, I'm not. No, man. I call it like I see it.
But when I think about that song and when I wrote about that song, it was kind of when I played the Brass Elephant. It was pretty much anytime I was home. It was always my weekend gig. Yeah. If I was home and I wanted to play, I could play. Yeah. So, and Bobby was just, everyone knew him there. He was just, and he brings in me, this new kid, and talked me up, and I was kind of the dive bar rock star there, and in that place I was pretty popular and famous, and at the time I was playing with Keiko Matsui, and I'd come back from Russia. I'd be in Russia for a month or whatever, and all these crazy things that, people around me, it was pretty impressive. Like most of the people in that bar had never been to Russia, you know what I mean? So it was home, it was a really homey feeling, and we could play whatever we wanted, and it was like, okay, take a solo and do what you want to do, and I'm glad that was the case, because man. I was just like, Bobby, you gotta call Chad.
Yeah,
he's gonna be perfect.
His life changed.
But that kind of goes back to what I was saying too about the versatility. Is that's what I just love about your playing, is that I'm kind of the same way, and we can go anywhere we want, and it's just so freeing, and you listen, and so I just feel like we're a machine, and we're always kind of moving together, and we have the same instincts because we listen to the same music, stuff, obviously, and have the same influences drum wise. But that's great. So then we met like probably 2001, I would guess, Yeah. I remember I went to Cafe Cordial, which is also has passed away, and no longer there, which is a bummer. It was an awesome club in the valley here that was run by a guy who really loved music, which is rare.
Very rare.
And anyways, it's gone. But I went there and to see a band called Hit Squad. I'm pretty sure it was because Noriko, I had met your now wife,
Yes.
Noriko, who's phenomenal keyboard player, singer.
Yes.
I like to call her the octopus because
Yeah.
she can play like 3 string lines at once and the piano part and sing all at the same time. And she's really great. Hopefully she'll be on the show eventually as well. And then I saw you play and I'm like, oh my God, that's the guy that has the twin brother from Berklee. Because we didn't know each other at Berklee.
Right.
So really we've known each other for almost 30 years probably.
Yeah.
But we didn't know each other then. And it was just like, oh wow, cool. And then I can't remember the bass player. Last Tonight Show. Derek Murdoch, yes. He was playing the gig at the time, I'm pretty sure. And then he moved to Las Vegas.
I never played with Derek and Hit Squad
interesting.
at all, actually.
Oh.
It was John Haynes.
Oh, okay.
Who plays bass for Rolls Royce.
Got you. Because, I got a cassette
But
tape.
I knew of Derek.
Was he in it before you got there, maybe?
He'd done it before.
Because I got a cassette tape that when Daryl Crooks, who was running the band, phenomenal guitar player. This show's going to turn into a lot of names that people may or may not know. I think we got to be careful of that. But Daryl Crooks, amazing guitar player, funky dude. And he gave me a cassette tape, and I'm pretty sure it was Derek on it.
It was Derek on it, and probably Daniel Bejarano was playing drums. If you got the same tape that I got, it was Daniel.
Right. So anyway, I saw you, I met you, and eventually I'm in the band. Because I had met Daryl, actually. That's how it all worked out. Because the first place I came was Stevie's, which is also no longer there. And I went to see Derek Edmondson on sax.
Yeah.
Edmondson at Stevie's. He was hosting the jam. So that's where I met Daryl. And, Derek got me right up because the guy from Denver had known Derek. Blah, 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 blah. When you get here, it's like whatever you can do, whoever you know, you just go for it, especially if you really want to make a living and survive. Because I didn't work a day job or anything. I came out here with my then wife. And she got a job. So, nice. So it allowed me a little more time to get going. But at the end of the day, man, I had to pay my rent. So, I'm going to do whatever I can do.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'd met Daryl at Stevie's, and then he's like, oh, come see my band.
Yeah.
Well, it was phenomenal, as it always was.
Fun gig, man.
And then I feel like the first time we actually played together was at a Hit Squad rehearsal.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, man.
Yeah. And I said, oh, man. And Noriko said, oh, man.
Yeah. So the 4 of us did a lot of stuff.
That was the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. It was super fun. And that led to Ollie Woodson.
That's right.
Which was my first Japan tour.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. I mean, it was an experience for sure. Holy cow. And, another guy passed away.
Yeah.
But that taught me a lot for sure about music and touring. I mean, again, first time to Japan. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun.
That was fun. I still remember the last night drinking beer and then going to Yoshinoya.
Plus, we got kidnapped in Tokyo.
That's right. No, not in Tokyo. Nagoya. But it was so crazy because we came out of the hotel and there was a couple of, or was it one guy? It was one guy. It was like one Japanese guy. Yes.
Came up and he's like, you guys are with Ollie Woodson. And I'm like, honestly, at that time, I didn't realize Ollie's popularity, I guess. I knew he was part of the Temptations, but it was like the later part of the Temptations
sure.
When, wasn't really what I would listen to.
Right.
I wasn't aware of it. You know what I mean? So to go to Japan and him just being huge in a lot of ways, and this guy just saying, well, let's go to dinner tonight. And I'm like, okay. And we show up after, and we're like, Ollie's not going to go, but we'll go. Yeah. So it was the 3 of us?
It was 3 of us. It was me, you, and Noriko. Did Art go?
I don't think Art went.
I don't think Art was smart.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought we were going around the corner.
Yeah. And we get in this car, and it's like James Brown everywhere, and all this R&B stuff, and lights and stuff. And we just start driving, and it's like an hour and a half later, we're in the middle of rice paddies. And we're all about to get killed. Are there Japanese serial killers? I don't know. I've never been here before, but holy cow. But then then we get out and it's like this house that had been converted to a restaurant and they're just free food everywhere. They had this cool bar with all these records and like old soul records and it turned out to be really neat. But cool. I really thought we were going to die.
So did I. I was like, this is going to suck. How are we going to explain this?
Yeah. I'm like, wow, I hope someone knows.
How do we explain this?
Maybe this is how we all get famous.
It's funny. The only thing that was in my mind to relax me during that was, well, this is Japan. They don't really kill people here. They're too nice.
Right. Yeah.
We find out later there's
well,
as in any other place, dark sides.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have this tattoo on my arm that's the Japanese symbol for soul, but it's like 2 characters. But if you cover up one of the characters, that's the sign for devil.
Ooh.
Which I didn't realize until I got to Japan the first time with it, and my shirt sleeve was right there. And they were like, Yakuza, which is the Japanese mafia, because apparently that's what they get on their...
Yeah.
They're the only people that really get tattooed. I'm sure the kids do now, but anyways, there's definitely a dark side. I'm a dive bar rockstar. I'd like to take a second to thank you for listening to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast. As a new podcast, getting the word out is a vital part of what it takes to keep the show on the road, or off the road, as the current case may be. If you would like to support the podcast, all you got to do is subscribe wherever you listen. And if you have an extra minute or two, please leave a review. You can also share and follow the podcast on your social media apps. Okay, enough begging. I hope you're having fun, and once again, thank you for listening. What else did we do at that time? We were doing Richard Street.
We did Richard Street.
Another Temptations guy, really great.
Yep.
And that was really fun.
Totally different dynamics.
And I think that all sort of led to this band Clockwork.
Yes.
That was really fun. Gary Patrick, cover band.
Another pivotal point in my playing.
Yeah. Well, it was a 5-night-a-week gig in Vegas, probably 2 to 3 times a month.
Yeah.
In the first month, we were out there for like 5 weeks or something, I feel like. Well, it all started with, we played at the Brew Pub actually one time. Right. The first time that you played with Gary.
Yes.
Who was the leader of the band.
That's right.
And then eventually the Ava Lounge, the Mirage wanted us. So we basically kind of moved to Vegas, once or twice a month and lived at the Mirage Hotel. It was amazing. And the only reason I bring it up is because it was such an awesome experience. And there's so many great musicians that played in that band.
It's in that band. And for me, that was a turning point for Vegas.
Yeah.
And a lot of great musicians were out there, and there were a lot of great bands.
Oh, and there were 2-3 bands a night.
Exactly.
You go to Vegas now and you've got to search for a band at all.
Yeah.
But back then, every place had like the Ava Lounge that we played doesn't even have music anymore.
No.
It's just a really
Japanese
expensive bar restaurant. Yeah. But then it was bands everywhere. It was awesome.
It was so fun because we'd get off from our thing and because we only play 3 hours?
Yeah, it was like 6:30 to 9:30.
Yeah.
We'd be done by 9:15 so they could get the next band on.
We'd check them out. Or we go somewhere else and we check somebody else out.
I'd be drunk by 8:30.
Yeah, man.
All I got to do is get to the elevator, and just go up to your room.
Up.
It was
that was
so
fun.
great. But Noriko played in that, your wife.
Played in that, yeah.
Just some great musicians. That was really fun. And
Gene Siegel.
Formerly of the band The Jägermeisters. Yes, he changed my life and probably wrecked it for a while. He introduced me to Jägermeister, and that just it was a very fun companion for the next 15 years. Yeah. I still have a bottle in the freezer right now, but I rarely partake anymore. But at the time that Dive Bar Rockstar record came out, it was just there's like 3 songs that talk about Jaeger on the record. It was a
way of life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a lot of fun because at the same time I was playing with Keiko Matsui, which I eventually got you on that as well.
You eventually got me on that,
and that turned into a couple of years.
That turned
fun.
into great years, and here again that gig. Eric, you like part of like all these pivotal points in my career and playing. Well, on the Keiko gig, you've been trying to get me on the gig for a while.
Yeah.
But there's a backstory to that. So, like, we and I start playing, and we got Ollie's thing, and coincidentally from the Ollie gig, before you came along, Melvin Davis played the Ollie gig, played one show.
Right.
And from that show,
Melvin Davis, amazing bass player,
legendary
incredible
bass player,
Shaka Khan, Lee Ritenour,
exactly.
Many more.
Noriko got the Shaka gig, and then they started getting their thing together, and then as a result of that thing and playing that gig with Melvin, I got the Shaka gig.
Nice.
And that was really cool. And then from that, I got another connection with Noriko's Tina Marie. So I got the Tina Marie gig, which wound up being the Tina Marie and Rick James tour, which was Rick's last tour.
Right.
He actually passed away on a break from the tour.
Yeah.
After Rick passed away, we had one more show, and it wound up just being a Tina show. And I was about to go out and do Rick's tour with the guy that took Noriko's place in Clockwork, which was Patrick Veal.
Yeah.
So we got the call. Well, I found out that Rick had passed away while I was showering. And we did the Tina thing, and obviously the Tina thing stopped. It had to. It just had to. Unfortunately, everybody was caught off guard, and she and Rick there's no secret, they were very close.
Right. I mean, he kind of discovered her.
Yeah, man.
Was responsible
produced
for
her first album.
Her
Yeah,
career,
I mean, really, her career is. So it was a big deal, and we had the Clockwork thing going, but you and I quit the Clockwork gig. Yeah,
eventually they were like, okay, this has been good. It lasted a good year, almost a year and a half, and they're like, okay, we're sick of putting you up. You're gonna move. And I was like, no.
Right.
I love Vegas. I kind of eventually always dreamed of retiring there, but I was like, not now.
This isn't the spot. I had toyed with it only because I was looking at it from a dollars and cents point of view. But I remember having the conversation with Noriko, and we weren't engaged yet. I was about to propose to her.
Interesting. And meanwhile, I had gotten divorced while we were in Vegas. My first marriage ended.
And my second marriage was just
about to pop off.
Right. Yeah. So she was adamant. She did not want to move to Vegas. And at the time, Ocean,
your son,
our oldest, he was like Kai's age. He was like 12 or 13. He was 12.
Yeah.
So she's like, there's no way we're going to pull him out of school and start. And I went to a psychic. Yes, I went to a psychic. I'm not ashamed. And the psychic, immediately I sat down, and she says, okay, you're at a fork in the road. She's like, you got this opportunity in front of you to move here and make this money. But if you go on the other road, there's a bigger opportunity waiting for you. But you got to be patient. And you got to know that one is instant gratification and the other one is forever. And you can make the decision yourself. She was basically like, you don't need me to tell you what decision. I can tell you, you already know. You don't need to be here.
Right.
So
right.
That's when I said, okay, October 31st, 2004, my last gig with Clockwork. Not a gig in sight.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing.
Me too.
And I mean, I had maybe some club stuff. Maybe
that's not true. I had Keiko Matsui.
Yeah,
but
I had none.
But Keiko Matsui was never enough to live on necessarily, just as a sole gig. But so I was I was just done. You know, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm not gonna be in Vegas.
Right. And that's so I freaked out big time. I didn't go into a dark period, but I just was for November, December freaking out. What am I going to do? And Ryo Okamoto, who's another amazing keyboardist, Japanese keyboardist, he called me on recommendation of another great drummer and friend of ours, Jimmy Keegan.
Who also was originally the drummer for
Clockwork. Yeah. Jimmy was back playing with Clockwork, and he couldn't do Ryo's solo tour between Europe and Japan And by the way, Rio and Jimmy, or Jimmy's no longer in the band, but Rio is a founding member of Spock's Beard, like one of the most badass prog rock bands ever to be on the face of the earth. So, so Jimmy recommended me for that, and I just was like, okay, all right, let me think about it. And we're on the phone. Noriko's driving, and Noriko says, "Is that Rio Okamoto?" And I go, "Yeah." And Rio says, "That's Noriko," and put her on the phone. So they go and they speak Japanese, blah 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 blah, and they do their thing. She gives me the phone back, and he goes, "See, man, it was meant to be."
Wow.
And so I go and I do Rio's tour, and it wasn't a lot of bread, but it was enough. It was cool, and it got me out. It got me playing another style of music that I'd only toyed with, maybe even at Berklee, not even, which was prog rock. And you know, if anybody's checked out Spock's Beard stuff, it's intense.
Yeah.
And Rio's solo stuff is even more intense because it's Rio. So they're not stuck into like Spock's Beard is never stuck into any formula of a prog rock thing, if there is that. But Rio would definitely put his other influences in there.
Right.
You know? So I did that for the month of December, and I come back home, and you call, and you offered me the Keiko Matsui gig.
Yeah.
And like I said, yeah, because I mean, I've been a fan of Keiko's, you know, since we were in high school. And when we hung up, I literally cried. I mean, I bawled my eyes out because I was like, I come home from the Japan tour, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do now.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Well, I'm so happy that happened and the timing was right, because I don't know that. I mean, I was a musical director after a few years with Keiko, mainly because her English isn't that great. Yeah. You know, I'm in town. I know a lot of musicians. So I was more kind of I feel like I'm an interpreter, and like if we need a guitar player, I'd go find a guitar player, you know? So it wasn't a traditional musical director role necessarily. I wasn't putting together the band and making sure they were great, and Keiko came out and we did shows. You know, Keiko was very much sort of still in charge. But sometimes she would start to say something, and then she would look at me and I'd be like, play it like this, you know what I mean? You know?
Well, and to me, because you call it, sorry not to cut you off, but you call it a kind of unconventional musical director, and I look at it as that's exactly what a musical director is. He does administrative duties first, or she. Right. And then the music comes next.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Pretty much. And I do all the charts, you know, and I would never have to fire anybody, thankfully, but because there was always management for that, which was awesome. So it was kind of a dream gig in a way. But you know, it's still an interesting thing. And you've been musical director on a lot of acts, and it's an interesting role to be in, because on one hand, if you're interacting with musicians in town, they know you might be able to get them a gig. So it kind of opens up doors in a way, and people will talk to you that if they don't know you or they do know you. But on the other hand, you end up kind of having to be a bad guy a lot of times. And that can get tricky, because there's guys that on the Keiko gig came on that did not cut it. Yeah. But they were phenomenal players. And like, I would love to do other gigs with them, but I've got to be on your ass because Keiko's not happy. And like, and this isn't about what I think about your playing. It's about what I think about what Keiko needs you to play like, because she is not a person who's like, yeah, man, play what you feel. Yeah. She's super specific. It's really like playing a cover gig. Like, when I give you the CD, I want it that you way. Play that fills and everything. Like, you might think that fill was just a guy doing a cool thing that night. No, if she doesn't hear that fill, that's going to throw her whole thing off. You know,
and she comes from, and all those contemporary jazz acts from that period, they come from that. That's what they did. Yeah, I mean, you know.
Well, she's also classically trained pianist from Japan, so she's got classical way of thinking, and this is how it goes. And
you know, that's on the musical director standpoint, that's one of the biggest things that I learned was ask the artist questions.
Yeah.
I'd rather not be in the dark. Just tell me what you want to tell me, what you expect of me. I remember when Ricky Minor made me the MD for Michael Bolton, and that was like, after working with Michael's previous musical director, Chris Camozzi, another just amazing guitarist out of the Bay Area. This dude is just insane, and he is a great leader. I mean, just like everybody I've worked between Ricky or Melvin Davis, Chris, Doug Grigsby, all these guys had, the one thing I learned from them was they asked questions. And for me, the biggest thing is, what do you expect of me?
Right. Right.
Because every artist is different.
Yeah.
And that MD position is different for every artist.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think that's right. And the thing about Keiko is that we had worked together so much, and originally her husband Kazu, her then husband, because they got divorced shortly after I did. He was always in charge, but he was also a very he paid a lot of attention to stuff, and I think he picked up right early on that I got it. Get it. I get how this is supposed to go. So even early on, Kazu would sort of turn to me and tell him what I mean. And so she just trusted that I got her music, and that's not always the case, I think, as a musical director. Sometimes it's you see it a different way than the artist would want it. Yeah. But you do what your job calls for. This was more I feel like me and her had a pretty good understanding of what we were doing, so I would just be myself. Sure. And it was usually in line. Not all the time. Sometimes she'd go against what I'm saying, but and I'm okay, do your thing, But she is always super nice. She's just the way I would tell it. But she's going to nicely ask you to do this until you do it, right? Or you go, right? She'll be somewhat polite about it, but she's not going back down. No, don't think that you're just gonna give her lip service and do whatever. But you came in the same situation, though. That's what was so great about you showing up, is that you just got it. Well, and you played in a way that turned her on as well. Well,
it was cool. I could immediately hear Keiko's gig was I knew it was kind of a Bernie Dressel thing, even though Art Rodriguez was
the guy that you replaced, that
I replaced. Right. But I could Bernie was on a lot of records, right? And so I could hear the influence and how important that was. Right. And I heard what Art was doing. So what I made sure of was that I played it as closely to that, and particularly the Bernie way, as possible. Then when I heard some opportunities to put some Chadisms in there, right, I took a chance.
Yeah. And it just happened to line up, because really it's definitely Bernie. And I don't know, I'd love to have Bernie on the show and talk to him about this. Bernie Dressel, phenomenal drummer, plays, his big claim to fame, I guess, is Brian Setzer Orchestra. Yeah. He played with him for years. But at any rate, Vinnie Colaiuta is really what she's hearing. Right. That's really her thing. And so I think even Bernie is sort of doing Vinnie, but Bernie is one of those guys that is Bernie all the time. Right, so Bernie's version of Vinnie was cool, alternative. Now you go and you do Bernie, but you turn it into something that you do. But it's always starting from a place that she enjoyed. Right. Other guys get on there and they immediately want to do their thing. Right. And I'm like, I know that it's supposed to be a jazz gig, but it ain't that kind of jazz gig.
my what I tell a lot of people, the secret to my success is I do the research with whatever artist I'm going out with or even auditioning for, and I try and hone in on who their favorite drummer is, or you can tell, you can really sense what artist is happy with what period or what, and that's where I try and go. Yeah, and that's my first thing, is to capture that thing. After I capture that thing, especially on a pop gig, or I'll sit with that for a while before I even start to rear Chad in. Yeah. Because I know there's very important for them to get that. I mean, with Michael Bolton, Michael just wanted the record. Yeah. And I was extremely cool with that. And that was something that I learned, where every gig is not for every drummer, just like I'm not for every gig. Right. But it takes a very special drummer scratch that. It takes a very special musician to play the same way night after night, regardless. And so you have to make it a game. You have to go, how much more perfect can I play tonight than last night?
Yeah.
That's
and to do that
is.
And keep the same live energy
Right.
every time.
And keep
because
the
it can't
enthusiasm.
sound like
Right.
you've done it the same way for
Exactly.
30 years.
And you can't sound bored. And it may be, I know it's boring for a lot of guys, but the whole point is, well, maybe to take the boredom out, you got to go, well, okay, how much more can I dig into this part
right.
from last night?
Yeah.
You up it up like that. It's like trying to play a video game.
Right.
And you're trying to get the best score.
Yes, exactly. The other thing that's nice about a gig like that, because Dwight's not far from that. It's like he respects the record and he likes consistency. And for me, I feel like it takes a lot of the stress away of like, I don't have to make as many decisions. I know what I'm going to get into. I know I'm going to go out and I'm going to play it like this and I'm going to go home. And it's, I mean, ultimately it's a job, know, and if you honor it like that, then it's not such a mind fuck, you know
exactly.
what I mean? Like, but some guys can't do it. Some guys can't handle it.
You can't forget that it is a job. Even I used to tell my first wife this: gotta love what you do.
Yeah,
you gotta love your job.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, what's the point?
Right.
So, with the mindset of it being a job, then remember why it is that you're doing it in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And if you don't dig it, get out of it.
Yeah.
But it is a job, so you have to fulfill that job description of what it is.
Right. Yeah.
And then after that,
So how is that compared to now? You're out on the road with Bruce Hornsby. Well, not now. No one's out on the road with anybody, which we can talk about if we want. But this is a weird time to start a show like this, talking about how to get into the music business when there's no music business.
That's right. I think it's a great time to talk about this.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think it's good because people will be available.
Yeah. And we're going to work. I mean,
Yeah. So now you're with Bruce Hornsby. Yeah. And the Noisemakers, you're an actual member of the band.
I am a noisemaker, which is still crazy.
And that's a different kind of thing too. You're not, so how is that playing wise compared to Michael Bolton? Are you playing it like the record? Or are you just doing your thing? Is it somewhere in between?
I would say it's somewhere in between. Bruce may disagree with me.
It is a band, but there is a name in front of it, so there is still someone that.
You still have to satisfy the boss, man.
Yeah.
Here's what so if anybody's ever seen any Bruce Hornsby show, whether it's him solo, it's the Noisemakers, or he did a trio thing some years back with like Christian McBride and Jack DeJohnette. Mm-hmm. It still blows my mind. Like, gee whiz. So it's definitely it's in the spirit of the Grateful Dead. We're not going to play the same show every night, and we're not going to play the same song the same way twice ever. It's always going to be changed. It's always going to be different. So then, with that, what I've learned is you've got your parts, the foundation, and Bruce wants, because he's like that with himself, the foundation has to stay the same. Mm-hmm. That is, if there's a specific groove that I have to play or something, I have to play that groove. Mm-hmm. If he says, you could do something, cool. I mean, we did last year on tour, he brought back a couple of old songs and really fun stuff. But there was one where I was so... I, for whatever reason, went back into a cover mode. Like, I was playing because there was like a lot of loops and stuff, and I was really recreating that whole thing.
Right.
And so, sound check, he would say, yeah, man, you don't have to be so stagnant. You can get off. You can create a more interesting part than that.
Cool.
Go ahead, be you. I'll let you know when not to do something. Right. So I still have to get used to that. Mm-hmm. Of remembering, like, I have some poetic license here, but that's Bruce's thing. So, and then once we're off, man. I mean, if it's total communication. If somebody plays something, and it inspires someone, that person will go with that inspiration and do that thing, which will inspire somebody to do something, which will inspire somebody else to do something. Next thing you know, 6 guys have went off on a tangent from one thing, and we've created something completely different.
Wow.
That's what he wants.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And not to mention that I fill in some crazy ass shoes.
Yeah.
Because the previous guys, Sonny Emery, Moyes Lucas, John Mullo. I mean, you know, these are guys, Mike Baker.
Yeah.
Gee whiz.
Right.
You know, the company he keeps.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's kind of in my head too, especially Sonny. Sonny's such a huge inspiration of mine.
And he loved Sonny.
Oh yeah, man,
you know,
big time.
He played the gig well,
extremely.
Yeah, because I think that's interesting too. Because like how you come into a gig, sort of, and we don't have to talk specifically, but if you're coming into a gig after a guy's been fired, then don't play like that guy. Right. But if you're coming into a gig where something happened and the guy left the gig, or whatever circumstance, but the artist was pretty pleased, play like that guy.
Go with that. Yeah. My money's on the guy that he or she loves every time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Every time. There's plenty of time for you to be you.
Right. So where does you also now currently also play with the Jacksons?
Yeah.
You're one of the guys in town that have 2 amazing gigs.
Yeah.
So where does that fall in how you approach the gig as far as, do you play it like the record? I mean, I've seen the show. It's not like the record.
No, it's not like the record. The Jacksons, Jonathan Sugarfoot Moffett is the cat that really put his stamp on the live aspect of the Jacksons show. So when I got the gig, I just immediately embodied Sugarfoot. That was the key. The guy that had the gig before me was Charles Streeter. And he had to leave the gig. Fortunately for me, unfortunately for the brothers, he had to leave the gig because he got the J-Lo gig. And Streeter's like another cat from Memphis who's just killing. Cat's got the groove thing, but he's got the chops thing too. And he's, just like a great all-around drummer. So I had the show tape of Charles, but I did basically what he did, but in the style of Sugarfoot. And so when they heard that, they were like, "Yeah,
you get it.
Okay, we're cool.
Right,
we're good."
Yeah, and doing that kind of research will get you the gig. 9 times out of 10.
Time,
it's so important, man. If you take that care and you really care about the artist's music and you put the time into the details of all that stuff, 9 times out of 10, that's going to get you a gig.
Yeah, and on the Jacksons gig, because we have to play it the same way every night, even my drum solo, everybody gets 8 bars.
Interesting.
And it was like at the beginning of the thing, it was like, okay, this is my 8 bars to do my thing. And if it was something I was thinking of, I would work on it and I play it. And then one night I played whatever I played, which is what I play now. And so the next night I played something completely different because I'm like, this is my 8 bars.
Right.
And they just, all 4 of them were like, no.
Wow.
Play that thing that you played the other night.
See?
And I was like, what was that thing that I played the other night? Right. The only thing I remembered doing was the stick toss because I was clowning. It was like, I was just having fun and clowning. And I went, I'll do this. And I did it with the double bass thing and all that. And then I did the 30-second thing that I do around the kit. And they love that. So I have had to play that every night for the last...
Yeah, and that might blow some cats' minds. Like, don't let it blow your mind that, like, I know it says solo, but this is what they want.
Yeah.
And do that.
Mr. Chad Wright!
kind of reminds me of another gig we played on. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Another gig we played on Lee Rittenauer that you got me on.
Yeah.
That I subbed. You know, it was Melvin's gig. He's awesome at it, but I was fortunate enough to be available. But I remember you always do an impression. Are you going to twirl the sticks tonight, Chad?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're a drummer, you got to learn the stick twirling, huh? You can't really get out of that anymore.
Well, I don't know. Well, okay. So on the Bruce gig, I don't.
Oh.
Maybe there's one song when we play Across the River, when we do the triplet thing at the end of the guitar solo. I'll do stick twirls, but I only do it specifically to keep me from rushing, and which is mostly anytime I'm doing a stick twirl. It's that my purpose is to keep me from rushing, because that's an issue I'm still working on to this day.
Yeah, me too. That's why we played together. I think we rush in
the exact same time.
Spaces.
So
that's pretty funny.
So other than that, I try not to do the flashes, because then, you know, here again, I think Sonny's put such a stamp on the Hornsby gig that I'm already getting compared to him, which that's the gig. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
But if I were to go and do that thing, then people will go, okay, you're just trying to be Sonny and that's the job description. It's like, no, I don't want to do that because, you know, but it's also forced me to, because every other song I'm soloing on the Hornsby gig. So it's forced me to go into places I've never gone before on the spot, you know, different sounds and different approaches, to pull out some musicality that's been pent up inside of me, or it just never has been in there. I saw something else and went, ooh, let's try that. Right.
Wow.
Good exercise.
Well, we are talking forever, and we haven't talked about High School Musical, Corbin Bleu.
Let's skip.
But what I'm thinking is there's going to have to be a Chad Wright part 2.
Okay.
At some point later on, because there's too much to talk about. And I want to get to talking about your studio, and you know, I don't know. You keep mentioning transcendental meditation. Is that where you're? Yeah. I mean, I know that you were big into The Secret for a minute.
Well, that's what tipped it off.
Yeah, which I kind of am too. Yeah. It's like something I don't talk about that much, but I kind of adhere to it.
I stopped being shy about it. How it came about was, so at the end of 2015, November, I had gotten so complacent in my playing, or I went into a place that I vowed I would never go to. And I was so comfortable, and I wasn't sitting behind the kit like I would normally sit behind the kit when I was home off the road. I was just in home mode, being a dad and going around doing local gigs and things of that nature, because it was like, okay, well, I'm home for a couple of months. I'll make the most of it.
Right.
And Ricky Minor called me for a gig he and his band were doing in town, and I'd stayed up the night before working on somebody's mix. And on top of that, and that's just nothing compared to, I didn't prepare for the gig the way I should have. I mean, I had the charts, and I made my notes, and I didn't sit, and it was groove music, but here and again, I always play the stuff down and really play it down, get comfortable. But I was so tired, and I got up and I went to rehearsal, and it wasn't feeling right. The only song that felt right was Can't Hide Love by Earth, Wind & Fire. And Paul Jackson Jr. said something, and it was like, Chad Wright, ladies and gentlemen. But it woke me up, because we rehearsed for maybe another hour or so, went down all the music and stuff. And then Ricky pulled me aside. He's like, yo, man, it's not feeling right. What's going on? And there were a couple of other things that were happening on something else that I was involved in. And I'm not speculating what he was thinking, because I never really asked him. I could just tell maybe it was, he had mentioned, like, maybe it's the cats that you're playing with right now. Because he's like, this is not the guy that I know. This is not the guy that's come in time after time and just nailing it.
Right.
So I was definitely tired. So Paul's comment made me go, oh, wow, now I know what it means about playing something in my sleep. Because I've played it so much. I know it so well. As opposed to the other music where maybe I played it once or twice, maybe I'd never played it at all. I was reading my ass off, so that wasn't the issue.
Right.
It was the feel and the energy. And I was tired and really didn't prepare. Right. So he's like, hey, I can't use you on this gig.
Wow.
And it was an eye-opener. Because he'd also mentioned, like, I had put on a little weight.
Wow.
And he was like, I could tell this is a different cat, because he's like, you know, you're the guy. You work out in the mornings, you run, you know, and are you doing any of that? And it was like, I'm not anymore. Right. So at that point I went, I'm changing. Yeah. And then a month or so later, I was doing a New Year's Eve gig with All For One, and my brother texted me and said, hey, The Secret is on Netflix. And I was like, what the hell is The Secret? And I watched it in the hotel room, and it was like, I got to get more of this. So I bought the book and I read it. And then a close friend of ours said, if you like The Secret, you should check out What the Bleep Do We Know? Right. Down the Rabbit Hole. And I watched that documentary and I went, oh man, I got to get more of this. And then that hit me to Joe Dispenza. And then I started doing the meditation thing, like right there on the spot, just little bits and pieces. So literally, like the day before Ricky called me for that gig, I was like, I'm just going to try this. So I meditated and I channeled Ricky calling me. And so I freaked out when he actually called me. But after watching The Secret and What the Bleep, it started to dawn on me, this whole metaphysical universe thing. And I was off and running. Yeah, it's worked great. Yeah, I started maybe 4 years ago, just every January. We usually have some downtime anyways. I watch the movie. And like every time I get something out of it that I start to use, and it's almost like what you need is going to pop out at you every time I watch it, you know. I haven't gone much farther than that, but I mean, it's worked like crazy. Like the one year there's a part in there where he says, money comes frequently and easily. Like if you just start thinking that, then it changes everything. So then every time I start freaking out about money or like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do this month? I would just take a deep breath and relax and be like, money comes frequently and easily. And boom. The whole COVID-19. So when I came home from Jakarta, and then literally like, we did one more rehearsal for Warren's run, and then Warren called the night before we were splitting. He was like, yeah, we had to can. So then it's lockdown. There's like no questions about it. We're locked down. Yeah. And Noriko is freaking out, and I'm not. Because of that very thing. Yeah. The freaking out part of it, what is that going to do? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the other thing that's been somewhat different about this is like, this is not a bad decision on my part. Like, there's nothing I can blame myself for. We're all in this, and like, exactly. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. No. So, I just happen to be in a good place. I had a little savings, you know, and like some residuals came in out of the right place, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm good. I'm just going to take a break, and this is probably. I fear that I've manifested this on all y'all because I needed this pause in my life. I think we all did. It was funny. I had all the studio stuff backed up, and I was going, okay, well, I'll just finish all this stuff in my hotel room. I've never really mixed with in-ear monitors before, but I got a really great pair, and let's put them to the test. Why not? If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it wasn't anything too heavy that I was working on, but I was manifesting more studio work and less corporate band work. And so for me, I thought when the whole lockdown thing came, it was, well, here you go. Here you go. First of all, problem solved. You don't have to worry about finding time to finish your deadlines for the studio. Yeah. Here it is. So I was able to do that. And that forced me to really address a couple of things in the studio as an engineer that I really needed to address, because I'm an analog engineer. I'm that old. So the digital thing, I still was getting a handle on. And this provided me the perfect time to really understand and merge this analog world to this new digital world in the way we're measuring sound.
Right.
So
Yeah, and you have a pretty significant setup. You do a lot. The great part about you, because I use your tracks a lot, and that's kind of the awesome part about just recording in general right now. It's like drummers got to have a setup. Everyone's got a setup. You can call a guy and they'll send you tracks, and I never have to go anywhere. But the great part is that you are an engineer. You did study that at Berklee. Yeah. So when I get your tracks, I don't really have to do much. Yeah. It's like, it's a Journey sounding record, and I get a big snare, and it's all EQ'd, and it's all nice, and you plug it up. I mean, you put it in your DAW, and it's just great, But so you've been doing a lot of that. You did that for Bruce Hornsby record.
Yeah. So the last record, by the way. Oh man, it was a fun record. Yeah. So the last album, and then the album that's coming out in fall. Oh, we tracked. Cool. We did 3 tunes where we as a band tracked over at my place, and then I did all the drum stuff there. And then there's a new album that we're going to start. We were supposed to start this week.
Jeez.
And obviously when they extended the lockdown, Bruce was like, yeah, okay, we're going to have to wait. Wow. But the whole band was flying out. 3 of us are here, and then, 2 are in Nashville, and Bruce is in Virginia. So everybody was coming out to LA, and we were just going to take a week and record at my house.
Wow. That's so cool.
And rehearse for the tour. So the tour, which has now been pushed so far to August. But
well, Chad, this has been awesome. Definitely think we have to have part 2.
Yeah, we should do
There's still so many stories we didn't tell, and so many things. And but I really appreciate you being on the show. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. You're an amazing guy to learn from.
Well, likewise.
And because you're also just a great guy. You're a great, phenomenal drummer. Anybody can look you up on YouTube, but you're also a really great guy. And I think that's such another key part to being a road guy in general. You got to get along with people. You got to be nice. People got to like you to put you on their gig. Yeah. And you're just a master of both. So
well, I'm still working on it. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
I'm a dive-bar rock star.
This is the part of the show that I like to call Afterthoughts, and just going to give you some of my thoughts on what we just went through and things that I'd like to highlight. And the first thing is that Chad started in a bar band in New England, which I think is totally cool because he's a legit dive bar rock star. Lines wrapped around the buildings he talked about, which I actually saw them play one time. I was out there. It was weird. I was in Boston doing a Keiko Matsui gig at Scullers and in Cambridge, and Chad and Rico and Chay, his brother, were doing a Temptation gig somewhere in the area. So after both our gigs, we all got in a car and we went and saw Cat Tunes, and they were awesome. It was very cool and very popular and very drunk. It was awesome. The other thing that's amazing about Chad that I think is important is that he still practices. This is a guy with a career like that, and he's still got, he talked about the 3-month mark. He's still got a regiment that he kind of does, And I thought it was really cool that he told that Ricky Minor story because it didn't really go his way. It didn't make him look great. He didn't have to tell that, but that's how honest he is about his own playing, and that constant looking in the mirror really keeps his chops up, and that's what it takes to kind of stay on top and have a career like that. So it's, it's really important. I played with a guy named Nelson Rangel, who's a sax player from Denver. You probably know him. He's great. But he practiced 8 hours a day. He probably still does. And he likened it to training for a sport. He had the mindset of an athlete. And I always thought that was amazing and kind of changed my way of approaching all of this stuff. I'd also like to make some corrections or clarifications on some things that we didn't have time to fully explain. We're talking about Berklee College of Music in Boston and not the super smart school in California, which is something you get really used to explaining when you are associated with Berklee College of Music. MP&E stands for Music Production and Engineering, which is a major at Berklee. And he talked about the Kenny Aronoff effect, which I thought was a great way of putting it. I've never heard it put that way, but essentially Kenny Aronoff was the drummer for John Cougar Mellencamp in his band. And through that popularity and because of his amazing chops, he became the incredibly sought after drummer that he is today. Like, he's on tons of records and plays live with all kinds of awesome artists. So look up Kenny Aronoff. He's great. The Cafe Cordial manager, that was the club in LA that I first saw Chad at. His name was Peter May. And if you ever run into him, shake his hand, give him a hug, thank him for everything that he did for the music scene while that here in LA, while that place was open. The brew pub was at the Monte Carlo. That was the first place that me and Chad played with Clockwork in Vegas, and that's not even there anymore. So don't go try to find it. Also, I said I was originally from Denver, then I said I was originally from New York, and you're probably all super confused. But anyways, I was born in New York. I grew up in Denver. And one other weird thing is, like, when I was musical director for Keiko, I mentioned that I was more of an interpreter. I don't speak Japanese, so I just meant musically because I kind of understood her music and could relate it to other people. So don't try speaking to me in Japanese because it won't go well. Anyways, I hope you had a good time.
I'm a dive bar rock star.
Wow, you've made it to the end. I'm hoping it's because you completely enjoyed yourself and are now filled with knowledge and inspiration to move forward with your dreams. If that is the case and you would like to stay informed of new episodes, live events, and general news, please go to divebarrockstar.com and sign up for the mailing list. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, or complaints about anything you hear on the show, please email me at fanmail@divebarrockstar.com, and you may even end up on the show. We at the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, with all of our hearts, thank you for listening, and remember, it's all about dreams.